Welcome in. This is exciting. I've got my main man, Muench, my other main man, Russillo. This is our first ever The McShay Show Saturday night reaction episode, if you will. I'm fired up. We're going to do this every single week after college football, after the primetime game. And hopefully we're going to get to the point where we're doing it live. Obviously, this is the first time doing it, so we're going to muscle our way through, and hopefully everyone gets to listen early on Sunday. But guys, what a finish to the day, right? I mean, looking at it, you got LSU, Texas A&M. You got Muench sitting up somewhere in New Hampshire watching all these games. You got Russillo with what's left of that T-shirt on his couch somewhere in Manhattan Beach, right? Just for taking it all in. Let's go. I love that shirt, Russillo. Way to set the tone early on. All right, let's start right off the bat. LSU A&M. I hate the phrase "tale of two halves," but my goodness, I can't remember a game, and I'll just throw it to you guys from here, and we can start in. I can't remember a game in which literally one play changed everything. And you know, we're on text threads, and I think Conor, our producer, made a good point. He's like it's unbelievable how one play can undo so much great. Talking about Garrett Nussmeier. He was at that point of the game where everything was going right. His receivers were making plays. He was showing all the things that, started to talk about him as a potential QB1 or somewhere in the top 3 quarterbacks in the 2025 NFL draft. And then all of a sudden, he's rolling to his left, under pressure, makes the decision to throw the ball up, 50-50 ball, throwing back against the grain, which you're taught at 9 years old not to do, right? He makes that decision. A&M intercepts the ball at 17-7 at that point. And then all of a sudden, Marcel Reed. Coach Elko makes the decision to bring in Reed. The defense for LSU was playing phenomenal. Best I've seen in years from LSU's defense. And it changed everything. What were your guys' thoughts?
Yeah, well, look, I think with Nussmeier, as good as he is, there's always a little dangerous to him. And on 3rd and 15, when he converts that one in the first half, the touchdown drive to make it, I think, 10-7, I remember just sitting there being like, he's going to throw to the sticks. He's going to throw to the sticks on 3rd and 15. And there's just not a lot of guys that do that. And when it works, you're like, this is why he's in the conversation. But that was Cam Ward light. I mean, LSU was dominating the game. The pass rush was winning all day. It's an LSU defense that looked like a carryover of last year. I was at that USC game, Todd, and I'm watching the secondary going like, I don't know. Yeah. And Baker, the DC, has gotten him to this point. There's so many playmakers. The pass rush is winning. They're in control of the football game. And they throw that pick, and it's just a brutal throw. And then Reed comes in, who we saw in the Florida game, just keeping the ball, and it just changed everything. I mean, look, they scored what in the second half? I think it was 31 points. It was 31-6 A&M in the second half. So
it was 17-7. He came in. Yeah. And I think it was 12 plays because I think it was Herb Street or Fowler said on the broadcast, 9 plays he's come in and it's been 14 points. And then like 2 or 3 plays later, they had the blindside block on the receiver that after they scored a touchdown that brought that play back. So it was another like 2 plays before they scored again. So it was like 11, 12, 13 plays he was in, 21 points after going 3.5 quarters with just 7. So, I mean, talk about just instant impact and change the entire game.
Yeah, I mean, look, LSU couldn't run the ball in this game either, man. I mean, they had 23 carries for 24 yards. So there was no real balance. It was just in the first half, Nussmeier was making play after play, and Kyron Lacey was converting these long 3rd downs. And it just seemed they couldn't sustain that offense the entire game.
Yeah, they're just going to throw it. You know what I mean? Because like even in the Ole Miss game, and I would say even last week, you're like, man, LSU is loaded with playmakers. Like, look at all these guys. And I think you're right, Steve. Like, they couldn't really run the football. They had one series where it felt like the running backs were involved. And then it just almost feels like a wasted play for them to even run it because they feel like their guys are going to win on the outside. And Nussmeier is so good. Like when it's right, there's all of these guys flying around. And Aaron Anderson, beating everybody down the field. But then obviously everything changes. Nussmeier, not only that one pick, the other 2 were terrible as well.
Terrible, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, let's go through them. So the first one we just talked about, the second interception, the second interception is on him, But ultimately, it's on Elko in that defense. I mean, it was a classic case of you get to the line of scrimmage, you're reading man-to-man coverage. Every key and indicator tells you man-to-man. Slot cornerback starts with his guy, looks like he's matched up against the slot receiver, runs with him for 3-4 steps, right? Then all of a sudden, his eyes peel back to Nussmeier in the backfield. And I rewound it like 3 or 4 times just to see the mechanics of the play.
Was the ball late?
No. He peeled off at the perfect time. It was a disguise. Elko called a disguise. They're in man-to-man coverage, according to Nussmeier. Everything that he read, pre-snap, first 3 steps of his drop, first 3-4 steps of the slot cornerbacks, dropping into coverage. He's going with the man. And then he peels off. He has flat slot corner in this coverage has the flat responsibility. But he runs with the slot receiver for a few yards to continue the disguise of man-to-man, and then he peels off of him. So it was an unbelievable play call, disguise, and execution from the defense. And then the third interception, it's a zone blitz. The guy's looks like he's coming off the edge, and then he baits Nussmeier. Nussmeier's trying to dump the ball off to his running back. It was his check down. And all of a sudden, that edge defender who's supposed to be rushing him is now playing underneath middle zone.
I thought he gave up. I thought he just was like, I'm not going to get there, so then I'll come back and watch the running back.
I couldn't tell. It looked like a design play, but it could have been based off of what, if a running back stayed in the backfield. I think that's what it was. So anyway, long short, there were 2 great defensive plays, disguises, and designs. But ultimately, it's on Nussmeier. And Nussmeier, just talking about him as an NFL draft prospect, like so good with anticipation and timing, the it factor, understanding situations, does not have the big time arm. Is not in the Cam Ward category, even Quinn Ewers, Shador. His arm is a notch below. So he's got to be great with all the little things. And he was to that point before the first interception. And then it's like it fell apart for him. Like the confidence dropped off a little bit. And again, just 2 great disguises and designs defensively, and they caught him.
I mean, I hear you about the situational stuff, but they were terrible at the end of this game. I mean, they were just the time management at the end of this game. I don't know if he realized the clock was going to stop at 2 minutes and they had no timeouts and they got to get a play in before that. And they just are just taking their time, setting up protections, making calls. I was stunned at how long that they were taking. I mean, obviously Reese and Herbstreit mentioned it on air, but it was so obvious. It's like, let's go. And I feel like that's kind of on him too. That was almost more concerning to me than the interceptions, was the not being like, not getting them to the line and getting the playoff.
Yeah. I mean, that was late in the game, but I mean, I don't disagree, but to me, like, I don't know. It's rare to have a game turn on its head the way this one did. Marcel Reed, he threw 2. He completed 2 passes. He was 2 for 2. I mean, think about it. And so like Baker, what he was able to design defensively and how effective they were versus Conor Weigman and like just unbelievable with their pass rush, their defensive line, and getting home. And then all of a sudden, and mentioned you were texting too, saying like, all right, now you're gonna just tear up the whole playbook.
Right.
Like, everything that we practiced all week long was for Weigman and getting after a quarterback who's I wouldn't call Weigman a pocket passer because he's much more productive when the play breaks down. He's outside and rolling around, but they throw the football. This was just our quarterback's more athletic and faster than you guys, and they didn't have an answer.
Yeah, look, I think Weigman had a tough game after getting a starting job back. Remember, he got hurt. Reed came in, and you could see how dynamic he was. Herbstreit was all over it because he said that the kid played with his kid in Nashville. So he said, I'd seen him play football since he was 9 years old. And the way LSU was dominating this game with the pass rush, they didn't have to really blitz a lot. They were getting there with 4. The left guard was replaced for A&M, and Weigman, who I think we all probably like a little, right? For him to be 6'18", I still don't know how many coaches would have benched him for Reed, considering Reed once, like if Reed had been perfect, right? Like Wigman probably doesn't get his job back. But remember, too, Wigman was like a big-time recruit. He's part of that massive A&M class when you look at his position. But, the thing I think is really frustrating if you're on the LSU side of this is you guys are right. Like, you didn't prepare for Reed all week long. So now it's a completely different offense. All the stuff that's working is now going to be different. But what I think is the most frustrating thing, like if I worked on the defensive staff for LSU, I would be going, hey, new guy keeps the ball. It's the Alex Orji rule. When you come in and you don't get to touch the football a lot and you're this great of a runner and you're this dynamic, the guy always wants to keep it. And I don't care. I would be like, I don't care if the running back gets it on the handoff on the Reed and runs it in for a touchdown. Don't leave Reed. And the pull that Reed had on the 28-17, that mesh point that they worked.
How did he not fumble that?
I can't believe it. I mean, that's one of the best pulls you're going to see all season long in college football on that play, and then Reed runs it in. But there were still multiple times where they just didn't know what to do. Because, look, he's so good at it, obviously. But there were too many times where I guess I would just be so frustrated saying, I don't even care if you missed the running back. He's probably going to keep it. And I would say that, like, anytime somebody comes in off the bench on that Reed play, I'm like, just kill the quarterback because he's going to keep it. And if you're wrong, that's fine. But the odds are in our favor. And then you're thinking, okay, stack the box and make him throw. Then he hits on that 50-yarder against the safeties. You're like, all right, well, now you give up. He was phenomenal. And now there's like a bigger question about him being the guy the rest of the way for the number one team standings-wise in the SEC, which is easy to forget.
He has to be, right? He has to be the guy, right?
I think so.
He has to be the guy until they run up against a defense that can actually defend this and has had time to prepare for this. And so there's got, I mean, you look at it and it's almost like, the Michigan game early on, I don't know. Can they continue to win like this? Like, it'll be interesting to see. But
they got
like Arkansas,
South Carolina.
Sorry. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, they got at South Carolina and Georgia, right? So those are pretty good tests.
Yeah, like Arkansas did a really good job against him.
Yeah,
of all teams.
You're right. Yeah, but I mean, right now it looks like he's got. I mean, until that happens, he's the guy, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, all right. Let's look at a couple of
time. That stadium. I mean, I'm sorry. It was like one of those moments where you just go, "How do you turn the page back a second time?" No,
you don't. I'm not insinuating that you do. I'm just saying it ain't all going to be this pretty and easy.
Of course.
Because they caught a defense that was absolutely unprepared for what they saw in the second half for the final quarter.
He had guys that didn't tackle either, like the running back. Major Burns has a play where he just didn't ate for LSU. He just was like, I'm just not going to go at either guy because I don't know what to do.
Hey, coach, like we didn't practice this week.
I felt like that flipped, by the way, in the halves, too. I felt like LSU tackled way better in the first half, and then A&M tackled way better in the second half. I thought that flipped. But can I say something real quick?
Totally. Yeah, because I thought A&M's tackling. Like, I think when LSU gets it rolling with all those playmakers, you're just like, what the hell are we supposed to do? These guys are going to win every 50-50 ball. Taylor had the touchdown, and then you've got the 6'7" tight end who gets the first down. He has the later touchdown. He's a freshman. But, look, I'm just adding to the elements of where A&M didn't look right in the first half because it was two completely different football games.
Momentum is nuts. I mean, momentum in college football is nuts. But can I say something as a former offensive lineman, as kind of a draft guy? Can we stop talking about these LSU offensive tackles like they're future Hall of Famers? I mean, everything I hear about these guys is that they're so good, that they're just elite offensive tackles, and I just don't see it. Every time I watch them play, I just don't see it. I think they're good. I think they're talented, but they lose. They had some tough matchups tonight. That's a good front. Scorton's a good player. The Shamars are both really good. It's a tough matchup.
Just a maniac.
Like Muench, just like a little history here for you, Russillo. Muench was kind of like hinting at this a little bit with me early in the season. Stanford Steve came on the other day. He pretends like he's one of the tough guys. Like, you don't watch the trenches, McShay. He was a tight end. He was a pass catching tight end. So like, I'm not sure.
He wanted to play in the slot, like 225. He could have.
Yeah, but he got Muench all riled up, and he got in Muench. Now I'm seeing playing with a different level of confidence. And he was like, I was at the South Carolina game, and I'm watching the LSU tackles get beat. And so now Muench comes in tonight, and he's got a little bit more oomph behind him.
Well, look, I mean, like all of these teams, you can tell a different version of the story. LSU should have lost the South Carolina game. The South Carolina got absolutely hosed by the refs. There's 3 specific calls in that game that are just atrocious. Ole Miss left Baton Rouge that night thinking they were probably the better football team. But what Baker had done with his defensive unit was different. Like, it was weird in the first half watching an LSU team this year going like, I don't know, their defense is awesome. They'll probably hold these guys. But when it comes back to the tackles, like, look, I watch them every week. Everybody makes fun of me for being a fan of them. I agree with you. I mean, for the profile that this offensive line had coming into the season and the tackles, and like, yeah, they're probably still, certainly Campbell's going to be a first rounder, but there's some moments on like 3rd and 2 where I don't know if they love it. Like, there's sometimes they'll line up. It kind of reminds me of Ohio State last year. We can even talk about it a little bit with Ohio State later today. But like, how you call plays on 3rd and short tells me a little bit of what you think of your O-line. And if those guys are all that, they should just be lining up on 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, kicking everybody's ass. And I don't see it enough.
Let me say this. Let's go big picture on A&M. A couple different areas. First of all, like, this is the first time in a while I feel like, and I don't root for anyone. I'm not saying like, but like, there's certain teams that it's just like, man, it's hard to pull for these guys. Like the Jimbo Fisher era at A&M, like the recruiting, like it was so great. You know, like the class they had, what was it, 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago?
2 years ago.
Yeah, it was 2 years ago.
There's going to be classes taught on that.
But work with me here. So they have that freshman class, right? And they're supposed to turn everything around. It's going to be, you know, it's going to be great. Finally, Jimbo's he's going to pay off, and all the money's well worth it. I go into, and it was before the Miami game, Texas A&M, Miami. I'm doing the game with Herb Street and Fowler, Herb Street somewhere else comes in on a video conference call, and Fowler and I go in the office. Jimbo Fisher. Jimbo's got all these 5 stars, right? Like all these super, like they're gonna be great this year. Maybe this year they'll kind of like come on, but next year certainly. I walk into the office with Jimbo, and I already have my opinion on Jimbo as a coach, and I've dealt with some situations in the past.
He's a pain in the ass.
Total.
Just say it.
And trustworthy is not a word that I would use for him. But I walk in there, and like it just feels like oil sales and used cars. Like it's just and I walk in, and hanging, there's 2 pictures on his wall. Mind you, like he's been a coach at the highest level, won a national championship, met all sorts of amazing people. I'm sure, like inspirational leaders and all these different people. I'm sure that he's come in contact with. You know, the 2 things, the 2 posters or whatever you want to call it, not posters, but 2 things hanging in his office.
A cat on a branch hanging there.
That would have been better. Signed jerseys from Pete Rose and Dennis Rodman. And I'm like, you know what? That fits. Right? Like,
that is weird.
So like, this is the head coach. This is the motivation I'm looking at, like, and the 2 guys that, like, you know, the character. So anyway, I don't know why I had to tell that story, but it leads to, like, for A&M now, like Elko comes in, tough ass, a grinder, old football guy, but he's also, he's a likable guy because he loves his players. He's a damn good football coach, a damn good leader, and a damn good like inspirer of young men, but also a damn good defensive coach. And so, like, now all of a sudden I get to watch A&M in a different light. I'm like, I don't pull for one team over the other, but like I can get behind what they're doing.
Right.
And early in the season, you're wondering, where is A&M? Is this going to take a while? I know they've got all the talent because it's holdovers from all the 5 stars in the recruiting classes, but now you're seeing what good coaching with this talent can do. And now you look at A&M 7-1, top the SEC. And in Notre Dame, they were talking on the broadcast, McDonough and McElroy earlier in the day, that A&M loss early in the year, or the A&M win earlier in the year looks, really good and all that stuff. But now that loss to Notre Dame doesn't look quite as bad because it looks like Notre Dame would be struggling. They're getting a little bit better. My point is this: they're 7-1. Their loss was early and wasn't that bad, and now they've got new life, a new quarterback. They're sitting at 14 in the rankings this past week. Everyone else in the top 12 belongs, and we can go through them, starting with Oregon all the way down. Everyone in the top 12, besides LSU at 8, looks like they should probably stay put. But I'm looking at Notre Dame at 12, pounded Navy. I'm looking at Indiana with another convincing win against Washington at 13 and A&M at 14. I think A&M should leapfrog all of them and get up maybe ahead of Clemson, was sitting at number 9 before, and take that LSU spot for whatever it's worth at this point.
I would put them, look, they're better than both the Big 12 teams. I had kept the Big 12 teams ahead of LSU just because I felt like they had to get this one. A&M was favored by 2.5 in this, so this isn't some like massive upset by any means whatsoever. But if you just wanted to play the rankings part of this, they were 14th in the AP and the coaches. Indiana's probably going to bump a little bit, but Notre Dame was dominant today. BYU won. Iowa State was off. I would put them ahead of Tennessee because I just think, like, whatever you think of LSU's record or whatever, like, that was a really tough win, and it was dominant in the second half. They just beat a pretty good football team after not being able to move the football or doing anything right in the first half. So I would think if you wanted to start projecting it out, like, I personally would have them probably 7 and move Tennessee back. And then you can do whatever you want with Clemson and the other Big 12 teams. You probably can't mess with Miami, even though the point differential is like 2 completely different worlds since the start of the season. But they kicked Florida State's ass today, like everybody does.
Yeah, it's going to be 8 at worst. I mean, Clemson feels like a soft 9 to me. Like, it just doesn't feel like. I don't know how else to say it. Like, I just
look
perfectly
said. You don't even say
right?
Else.
I mean,
I totally get it.
A soft 9.
I think Klubnik. I mean, look, it'd be weird if Clemson didn't play anybody out of conference and get it handed to them week 1 against Georgia. But if you're going to get smoked by somebody, at least have it be Georgia. But I think Klubnik and some of the playmakers have all gotten better. But it's just funny if they had played like, whoever, just name whatever FCS school you want. They were undefeated. We'd be tricking ourselves into thinking like Clemson was back to being Clemson, because I like them, but they're not. I mean, that version of Clemson, we're not seeing that this year, I don't think.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting because what's Iowa State? How good's BYU?
I like Iowa State. I like BYU.
I do too. But I'm saying Notre Dame, Indiana, and A&M in reverse order. It would be A&M, Notre Dame, then Indiana for me. Like, they all belong to me. I don't know. I think they're all better teams.
But does Iowa State have a win like tonight, like A&M did against LSU?
No.
And again, it depends on what you think of LSU, but they don't. It's not Iowa when Iowa was 21. If you go through Clemson's wins, you're not going to find something like this.
No.
There's nothing there.
Soft 9. BYU, I love that, man. That was the line of the night.
No. I mean, the BYU game against Kansas State's really impressive. They were, I think, double-digit dogs at SMU week 2, and they beat them 18-15. Oklahoma State's like this weird out, even though they're in last place in the Big 12. I don't look at them as some horrible football team.
Right.
Again, jump in if you disagree at any point, but I don't think those teams that we're talking about in front of them, like, what's a better win tonight? A&M tonight at home against LSU, or Tennessee last week at home against Alabama? Oof. I think it's tonight for A&M.
Yeah, I do too. There was something different about tonight. They took the best possible punch from LSU. That was LSU's A game on
let's call it a B with the field goal situation.
Okay, fine. And the lack of a balanced run game, I'll give that. But like, Nussmeier was at his best for 3.5 quarters. Awesome. He was awesome. Let's get to Nussmeier. I mean, for this show specifically, We're always going to try to move it ahead, and we can get back to it Tuesday. Mention a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm watching the game, ripping through a little bit on X, and it's like, I was on Nussmeier earlier. No, me, I was on him earlier. He's my QB1. No, he's my QB0. I like him more than one. Like, it was out of control, right? And I'm texting with Herbie during the game, and he's something, by the way. Like, the fact that he can be in the middle of a game, and I'm sure there's 19 other people, but like as dialed in as anyone ever. But he made a good point, and this was when they were winning. I think it was 17-7 at that point, and he was dealing. Nussmeier was dealing, and he was talking just like, my goodness, this guy has it. Like love his game, And then, but he said, I'm interested to see if he's going to come back next year. No one's talking about that. He's got another year. You go back to like Joe Burrow, the first year he had in LSU was good, But then he came back.
He was all right.
Yeah,
he was all right.
Yeah,
but there was no way he was leaving.
Nussmeier's playing at a higher level than
right.
Burrow. Yes, I agree. And only saying Burrow. But the point was that Herbstreit made, and it made me think, is like maybe he comes back next year. And I texted real quickly back and let him go. I was like, you know what, like he's got. It looks like he's got a lot of like the mental qualities and the processing that he needs, but like, my goodness, the numbers in Russillo, we've gone over this 100 times. And Muench, we've talked about it for years. Like game experience is so critical for quarterbacks. It's not like just about getting in the league. It's about being ready to play in the league because you know if you're going to be drafted early, you got to get in. So I've got this like both edges going. And this is when it's 17-7 and he's dealing. I'm watching everyone on Twitter. Like, he's the best quarterback ever. And Herbie's like, I just wonder, you know, just wonder, maybe he comes back. And then you watch those 3 mistakes. And you start to think to yourself with that perspective in mind, God, I love him. And if there's a lot of ball left, we'll see what happens. But those 3 mistakes are things that maybe he doesn't make those mistakes next year. And more important than just putting better tape out there for scouts, that he's learned those things. So he's going to be interesting to watch because the groundswell for Garrett Nussmeier, QB1, was like at an all-time high. It was even, I think it was higher than Milroe. And Russillo's been busting my balls for 3 weeks because he said, why not QB1 on Jalen Milroe? Like, who knows? There's a lot of football left. And since then, it's all the reasons why not Jalen Milroe QB1. So anyway.
At what point did you have Nussmeier ahead of Sanders? Have you had
No.
Okay. All right.
I'm not one, like, I don't care about, I'm more of Jay Glazer than I have to be Shefty. Like Jay Glazer will come and give you the Jay Glazer's new thing on Fox is I'm going to give you the news that's broke this week, but I'm actually going to tell you the real story and it's more interesting.
Yeah.
Some of these other Shefty's the greatest of all time, good friend. Like I'm not saying, but I'm saying like everyone on, you know, there's so many different NFL or reporters that have to get it out there first. And it doesn't matter. And so I'd like to be Shefty, but I also think it's more important to like, let's take a step back and kind of see how this thing goes. I'm not like staking a claim right now because it's stupid to stake a claim until you've seen the body of work.
And then you see a lot of people stake a lot of claims, like where they just go out and they have 15 guys that they throw there. You know, they're throwing darts about, oh, I found this guy first. And no one remembers the guys that they were wrong about. And then they bring up all the guys that were right about later on. So, I mean, it's weird. But just to keep it in perspective, though, like when you say you love Nussmeier, you liked him as I
thought he was rising. I thought he was absolutely rising. I said it early in the year. I know Russillo and I talked about this. Like he's a guy that I'm really intrigued about. Can he continue this upward trajectory? I love the way he plays the game, his timing, they had a great stat tonight. I don't think I've seen it before. It's the sack to pressure rating. He was number 1 in the FBS. It was like 1.5%. He does it gets, and it's not just ask Muench. The offensive line sucks for LSU, but it's not like his.
Who does these analytics? I mean, come on,
buddy. I would have said this guy's as good as there is in college football in terms of when pressure's there, not getting sacked. And all of a sudden, ABC pops up this statistic, and I'm like, shit. Where's that stat been in my whole life? So I thought it was interesting. So I'm going to bring it up on this show. So deal with it. But no, I mean,
he's been sacked. He's been sacked 4 times all year, and there were plenty of good throws in there tonight.
And he should have taken a sack instead of throwing the ball up and changing the entire trajectory of the game. So I'm not saying it's everything, but
he could have just run out. He could have thrown it out of bounds.
Yeah,
he could have run out of bounds. I mean, he could have done a bunch of different things, but he must have been watching Miami tape. I think. I defend you guys, you know, as a non-draft guy that's friends with all the draft guys and for years had to answer for both Mel and Todd all the time for my friends. Like just everyone outside of it that loves the draft hates it, wants all of you to be the dumbest human beings in any profession, which you guys both know. So I defend you. And I also realize that here in late October, you haven't even come close to scratching the surface and the amount of work that you're going to do when you really dig into these guys, when the bowl season is over and you have a full season of tape. But I would tell you, like, tidbits that I've gotten this year from just like little hints at where the rankings are. I think the collective profession is out of their fucking minds with how they've jumped around. Like, I don't know that Beck has done anything to prove that he could have been the number one quarterback drafted. Everybody was all over themselves after the Ewers game against Michigan. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, it's funny because I thought Sanders at certain times was the guy. And again, no one cares about my non-draft rankings. Here's a non-draft guy, but
no, I'm interested.
Like,
yeah, no,
but like Nussmeier in the first half, all of these throws, throwing with the anticipation, and then we started getting like the close-ups of his face. We're like, look at this guy, look how calm he is. A&M on a Saturday night, and I'm at home going like, maybe they're right, but you know how many times like, hey, he looks just as calm in the second half, and he's fucking up. So cool. Like, it's like the Nico Iamaleava thing, where it's like, this guy's so in control of his emotions. It's unbelievable. Look at this guy. His total confidence. It oozes out of his pores. You're like, dude, he's 9 for 22 for 112. Like, okay, sweet demeanor. Look, I think Sanders and Cam have been the most consistent.
Right.
And
Sanders
even with all
has been the most consistent. Cam has been consistently great and also consistently scary.
And getting his team back into some games where it's like, you got to have some big boy stuff to you. Now, if you like Sanders more than, right. Like, I'm always worried Sanders is going to get murdered in one of these games. But look, I'll say it, like the start of the Colorado season, I was like, cool, not doing this again this year. These guys stink. And they have turned it around. They have figured it out. And, Sanders has that same juice to him too. Like, hey, we need something right now. And that guy delivers a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was 10 for 10 with 116 yards, a touchdown, and a rushing touchdown when we came on.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, he's looking again. He's just dealing. Yeah.
Yeah. I was never a Carson Beck guy. Mensch will tell you, I think I made that clear to you, Ryan. Yeah. Like, I just was never a Carson Beck guy coming in. I didn't love his tape. I thought he'd make a jump. He didn't make. He's in my mind, I think he's regressed a little bit this year or flatlined, whatever you want to say. Quinn Ewers, it's not been the same since the injury. He just simply has not been the same since the injury. We'll get more information, see what's going on there. Even today, and we can get to Texas a little bit, lackluster, like just so. To me, it's really it's Shedeur Sanders, it's Cam Ward. Jalen Milroe, I've said for a long time, is an absolute wild card. Like, what did we learn today? I got to go back and watch the tape. I don't feel like in that Alabama-Missouri game I learned a whole heck of a lot of anything. He ran the ball a little bit more aggressively at times.
He ran it better. Yeah,
he ran it better.
That score's a little deceptive too. I mean, that Missouri team was. I mean,
they were beaten up. I mean, starting quarterback out, starting running back out. Yeah, so
3 picks. Yeah.
So that's where we are with the quarterback.
I think it should be TBD at number 3.
Who?
It's just an outside guy that watches a lot of ball and stuff. I think it should be Sanders and Ward, and then it should be TBD. And I don't think we should pencil in. There shouldn't be anybody jumping anybody at the top 2 with one half of football.
I'm just curious. Like, I'm gonna wake up tomorrow because it's late now. I won't do it, and there won't be anything.
We hope we all.
I think it'll be crickets. There have been mornings. There have been mornings after nights with you, my friend Russillo. But anyway, I digress.
So hard.
But I'm curious to see. Like, I couldn't even get down to like normal draft X. I always call it Twitter X, whatever you want to call it, without like Nussmeier. He's my guy. I'm just curious to see how quiet.
Man, this really was hot tonight. There's a lot of Nussmeier, my guys. I didn't even know this was happening.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, there was a groundswell.
Do you know that I saw, like, speaking of all this quarterback craziness, there were mock drafts with Wegman in the first round coming in.
PFF had him graded as the number 1 guy going in.
I mean, based on what?
Yeah. But they had him not it was weird. The quarterback thing's always weird in the overall rankings. Like, you guys will have somebody ranked the 21st best prospect. Right. He's the best quarterback. You have him going 3rd or 4th in a draft. They had him 15th overall. And then when I thought, I was like, oh, okay, I got to pay attention to that. And then I scrolled through it. And he was the first quarterback. They had great. He had the highest grade.
I just never saw it. I mean, there wasn't enough to see to like make that kind of a projection. So,
all right. Couple other things I want to get. I could honestly do this all night. I mean, it's 12:15 in the East Coast, but I could do this all night. Illinois, Oregon. I got you here, Russillo. I want you here every week. I mean, I'm going to bug you every single week. This is amazing.
Yeah,
but
that's not happening.
I'm well aware. I got the text. I got the text like 20 minutes before we came on, Mitch. I texted him. I'm like, "You still good for tonight?" Because the game was running long. He's like, yeah. And then I got a follow up like 15 minutes later. He's like, "When are we doing this?" Yeah. I could like hear the.
I'm dying to talk to you and Muench right now. I can't wait.
I could hear it.
That is what happened in that Spurs. Dylan Brooks and Chris Paul got into it. That Spurs Rockets meet. I got to get back to that.
Illinois, Oregon, because you're my Ducks guy, dating back to all the awkwardness with the cheerleaders. You're my Ducks guy for life.
They like me now.
Let me make a point on this. Dominant performance. We were texting a lot early in the season. We've talked about it. Really underwhelming early in the season. Like like the offensive line didn't look that good. Are they consistent enough? Like, is this really one of the 4 or 5 best teams in the country? And Ohio State opened my eyes. And then today, like that Illinois team is good. I'm not saying they're at the upper echelon, but to do to Illinois what Oregon did today, and I'll say this 38-9, it doesn't even feel like the Notre Dame score was more appropriate. You know, when I was watching that, Notre Dame finished 51-14. It felt more like that.
6 fumbles, right?
Yeah.
By Navy,
I mean, it was ugly. So I want to make this point. Will Stein, unbelievable hire by Dan Lanning. The foresight. I want to go through this because I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole during the 3:30 games. So Will Stein last year, Bo Nix, best year of his career, right? Bo Nix goes on, first round draft pick, and it kind of catapulted his career. Will Stein was a quarterback at Louisville. He was a backup throughout his career. Played in 12 games, but sparingly his final year. Was a GA for Louisville the following year. He went on. He was the Texas. It was quality control. Quality for people who don't know. Quality control is it's like an intern. You get an internship, but then they you go from unpaid to like a paid internship. That's basically what quality control is. It's just getting your feet wet. Unbelievably important step in a coaching career, but you're not doing a whole heck of a lot that's factoring in the games. Then he goes to Lake Travis High School, one of the powerhouse high school football programs. He's not the head coach there. He's the assistant head coach and the OC. He's there for a couple of years. Then UTSC rises up to, after a couple of years, rises up to co-offensive coordinator. I think he was wide receiver coach and then co-offensive coordinator and quarterback coach. Then Dan Lanning hires him from there to be the offensive coordinator at Oregon. Dan Lanning coming from Georgia, trying to build this powerhouse, and hires that resume to be the offensive coordinator, and then gets the best year of Bo Nix's career out of him. And now Dylan Gabriel. I keep waiting for that Dylan Gabriel game. We all know the game, right? Where all like the fun, crazy stuff like backfires, and we saw the second half, the final quarter and a half from Nussmeier tonight. Haven't seen it. And what I saw today, and I know I'm going on a rant, and I'll shut up in a minute, but the defense from Illinois is simple. They have that bare front, 5 guys across, 3 guys in the interior. They're going to stop your run. They've got numbers now against all the option stuff, and they've got a single high safety, and they're going to play man-to-man on the outside. And so Stein comes in and is like, fine, like we're not going to run the ball. We don't have to run. And so they start man beaters, putting the quarterback, Dylan Gabriel, in a position, and Gabriel comes out and looks like Dan Marino. You know, it's Tez Johnson, it's Evan Stewart, it's Justius Lowe. Is it Justius? Is that how you pronounce it? Justius. I mean, he's new on the scene, but I know the staff loves this guy. He had a big game, number 14. And the tight ends have huge games, Herbert and Sadiq. So I just like. We don't talk enough about this Will Stein guy. I wanted to get that in a game where there was a blowout. But the more I watch Oregon, the more I'm a believer. I'm not saying they're the best team in the country, but they belong there at number 1 right now. And I truly believe they are one of the 3-4 best teams in the nation.
I feel like it's Justice, but I'm not sure on the call.
It might be.
That game, I got out of that game quick. Look, since Lanning made that hire and since Lanning's been at Oregon, they're the number 1 scoring offense in the country. They started off the year, they couldn't pass protect, and they couldn't run the football for the first 2 weeks. So it was really weird. I picked Oregon to win the national championship.
Yeah.
And it was just a bit of a zag because Ohio State, won every single offseason headline because of all the guys they brought in. One of the most talented teams to ever put together. It was kind of the way people were talking about it. But I mean, I don't think anybody really thought that with Will Howard, although I thought Will Howard showed me more than Will Howard's ever shown me in that Oregon game. But going into that one, I felt like Oregon, Ohio State would split and they'd rematch again. And then, whoever lost this one would get that one. And then when Jordan Birch was out, who's probably their most SEC type D lineman, last year that was a really big plus for Oregon's defense. It wasn't just this flashy offense. I wasn't even a big Bo Nix guy. I'm still not a big Bo Nix guy. He literally was perfect last season. He just played the position perfectly. So I think Gabriel actually has a little bit more juice to him. Tez is awesome. I mean, that crosser that he caught today, where you're like, well, okay, he's going to get tackled at some point. Wait, he's not going to get tackled. He just finds his way navigating through everybody. And Jordan James, not only does he love killing people that try to tackle him, watch him on some blitz pickup. He's a motherfucker, man. Yeah. So I thought that, whether it was a shootout or Ohio State, a couple things go their way, they certainly could have won that football game. But I thought physically to hang in there with Ohio State, which you're always going to probably think benefit of the doubt, I'll probably give it to those guys traditionally, even though I think Oregon sometimes is overlooked for how physical they've been, even going back to the Chip Kelly stuff. You don't run the football the way they ran the football without being a physical football team. But the early concerns, it's over. It's been over a month. We just shouldn't have those concerns anymore. And Illinois is a good defense, we think, because more often than not it is. But then it gave up 540 yards to Purdue, which is one of the worst football teams in the Power Four. So and Altmaier, who's that transfer, he'd been 15-1 and touchdown to pick ratio, and then he throws 2 picks today. So I'm with you. I think Illinois is kind of a feisty team, and Bielema has done a good job with them. They're probably more about their defense than their other offense. But now I'm just kind of talking about Illinois too much, because in that 21-7 game they lost to Penn State, 3rd and long for Illinois, felt like it was just hopeless. It was one of those nights where you guys are never going to do anything against Penn State tonight. But Oregon, I know we do this a bit with the tiers and drawing this line in the sand of it's now Georgia and it's Oregon and whatever, but the early season concerns for Oregon, if they're going to lose, it's not because they fixed all of that stuff, is my point, which I could have just said in 10 seconds.
Yeah, but that's why you're here. Is there anything more evident in the world than mention I live in the Northeast when we're jackets and bundled up? And
just think how great your wardrobes are.
And I buy meat stick rolls in with his arms, his sleeves ripped off.
I know today was cardio too.
I'm kind of surprised you haven't made the move out there, McShay.
I tried. There was a minute.
I know you love the area, right?
Yeah,
man. The area loves McShay.
Yeah. I founded Manhattan Beach. Let's just be honest.
McShay made once he found out that Jade Hotel. I had a friend that played for the Kings, was traded here, so I knew about it before I knew Todd.
Yeah,
but then
it's like Nussmeier is my QB1. Here we go again.
It is a bit like the Nussmeier claim, but McShay reintroduced the world to certain ESPN members because he was like, "Don't tell too many people, but Shade Hotel's approved by Disney Travel." And I was like, how's that even possible? He's like, I don't know either. He's like, it doesn't make any sense.
I can say so it now. I don't even think it was approved. I think that it just slipped by they took the receipt by accident.
I got it approved. They were like, as long as you pay for your own car service into LA. And I was like, fine, done. Because I'd be living at the JW Marriott. Let's keep doing this. Yeah. Anyway, Ohio State.
Yeah, Ohio State. But to your point, Oregon and Georgia, we all agree. Right there, 1-2. Penn State was sitting at 3. I'm not a believer. I'm going to say it. There, done. We'll move on.
Well, I like them more now than I ever did before. The offense is totally different. And the backup QB is a baller, too. Yeah. Aller went out today. And Aller, I think you could make the argument. I think the stats show, based on who's qualified, he had the best passer rating. But Pabula comes in, dude, and that guy's he's probably a better fit for that.
They needed him tonight.
Anyway.
Yeah.
They needed him. I mean, they would have won. I got it.
Pick 6, but you go ahead.
But my point is, Ohio State and Texas, shaky.
Ohio State might be down to their 3rd offensive tackle, their 3rd left tackle.
So let's get into let's dive into that
game. Day was like, we can't run the football.
Yeah, I mean, they couldn't run the football.
It's punishing.
I mean, they scored. Was it 21 today at home? That's not.
They had one drive in the third quarter. One drive where I'm trying to think. What was it? So in the third quarter, Will Howard had the interception, set up that long drive for Nebraska. Goal line stand, right? Then Nebraska gets the ball back, marches down again, touchdown. And I think the 2-point conversion, right, made it 17-14, I think, at that point. And then, no, it was the fourth quarter. So that's when Ohio State was trailing. It was
Ohio State didn't do anything in the third quarter.
Sorry, it was that's what happened in the third quarter to get it 17-14 Nebraska. Fourth quarter, Ohio State's trailing. First time back on offense when without the lead, right? Chip goes back to the ground, and that was the only drive of the game. It was early in the fourth quarter. They're trailing, and it was Judkins, it was Henderson, it was Howard on the ground with the run, and then it was Judkins again with the receiving touchdown coming out of the backfield to the left side, made it 21-17, and that was the final score. But like outside of that drive, at no point did I feel like Ohio State was the physically dominant team on the offensive side. And against Nebraska, I know Nebraska's been good on defense. They've had moments that against
Indiana, just murdered.
That's what I'm saying. No, that's what I'm saying. Is that if Ohio State is one of those teams, you got to be able to line up and wear them down. And I didn't see that.
Well, look, I think we've all been around long enough to know that just because, like, I'm bringing up the Indiana thing because I think that's what made today so surprising. Nebraska's headed in the wrong direction. I think some of the stuff's getting to Raiola a little bit. The interception he had late, he forced it. I don't think he saw the safety. Joel Klatt 2 weeks ago made like a really good point on like a certain play with Raiola where he was like bootleg. It was a play action bootleg. And I think he faked the handoff from like 5 feet away. And again, he's a young kid or whatever, but Klatt was such a great point by Klatt. He's like, this is the kind of stuff you're going to have to like clean up a little bit. All right. Because you can't, because I mean, he's just so relaxed. It's kind of like that stuff we were talking about a little bit earlier. Because when Raiola was dealing, you're like, oh, he's just a live arm and it's so relaxed. It's all these different things. But just to bring it full circle, like after it was 21-17, you're right. They hit the big play to Tate. Judkins has the reception. So yeah, I guess I was doing it 17-14 to 21-17. Nebraska goes 3-and-out, and you're like, all right, this game's over. Ohio State goes 3-and-out before the Raiola pick.
Right.
Like that was the possession where I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah, they might have got backed up on a holding call, then their tackle goes down, and then they throw like a bubble screen on third and long.
Third and 9. And they're getting 9, they got backed up. But I mean, you know, it's 1st and 10, it's 2nd and 9, it's 3rd and 9, and then there's a timeout, and you're kind of like,
they were booing.
Damn.
They were getting booed at home.
And Howard was fine. Howard was fine today, I thought. I don't know if you guys.
The 40-yard touchdown that hung in the air for about 20 minutes and he still completed it? I was like, dude.
To Jeremiah Smith?
I think that was the. Oh, no, it was the.
No, I was just saying that was fine.
There was one.
No, he underthrew. He underthrew the first deep one because I was watching it going, how slow are these safeties for Nebraska? Right. I was like, they're going to score 50 against these guys today. And then. Because I just figured they were going to deep shot the hell out. I could not believe there were 2 specific deep shots in that game where I'm going, where's the Nebraska guy? That ball's up there forever.
Yeah. And the frustrating part, if you're an Ohio State fan, is like the defense was dominant in the first half. That was the best. I think this defense has you go back to Alabama's defense with the national championships. It was like 3-4 first rounders, 7. Like I can remember doing all these lists, like 7 guys in the top 100, you know, and then the next year they'd have 5 guys in the top 100 and four of them in the first round, reloading. And the same with Georgia the last several years. Everyone talked about this Ohio State defense, and yeah, it's loaded. Yeah, it's talented. Where's the first rounder? Not first rounders. Where's the first rounder?
I really like the defensive tackle, Tyleik Williams. I don't think he's going to end up being a lock.
No. He's got the best shot.
Downs will be a first rounder. He's just a sophomore.
He's just a sophomore. I'm talking about because every year they were reloading. So you're
right. For us to not be able to come up with the first rounder for the 25 class is unheard of.
Yeah, they have 2 pretty good edges. I don't think either one of them is a lock to be a first rounder. Sawyer and
JT.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, but anyway, but in the first half, it was like, okay, a bunch of second, third, fourth round guys are starting to play together and play great.
Yeah.
They really were. They were playing great. They were smothering. They were dominant. They were sniffing out screens. They were batting the balls to the line of scrimmage. Like, that was the defense I expected to see. But then I was watching Fox when they went to halftime for a minute before I flipped over to another game. And someone made the comment, like, this doesn't, what was the score at half? I forget. It was
14-6.
14-6, yeah. It doesn't feel like 14-6. But so if I don't, and again, it's one game, but like, it doesn't, I haven't watched Ohio State yet this year and felt like they're clicking. You know, their best game was in a loss to Oregon, quite frankly.
Well, I don't think the defense isn't the problem, right? I mean, that kid, the linebacker, Cody Simon, all over the field.
No, the defense isn't the problem, but is the defense exceptional? And in moments like the second half, you got to understand, yeah, they had the goal line stand against, but Nebraska marched down the field and got to the goal line, and in a close game, and then marches down the field again and gets the touchdown and the 2-point conversion. Now it's 17-14. So again, you're only giving up 17 points, and you were great for a half, and it was only 2 drives. But when we start to talk about Oregon and Georgia, and if Texas gets back and figures out what's going on with Ewers and everything, I just don't like, I know they're the most talented team that money can buy and all that stuff, but I haven't seen a complete performance outside of the loss to Oregon where I'm like, they're absolutely, they belong in the conversation. They're just as good as Oregon.
Yeah, that's fair.
You know, and they were that night. They were like but I don't know. I haven't seen it. And I wonder if we're going to see it. And I do agree with you. I think the offensive line, if I'm Ryan Day and I'm waking up on Sunday, it's like, we got to get this fixed if we're gonna really make a run at this.
Yeah, I think the great thing about Ohio State, over the years, we know that this is true, is 11 times out of 12, it wasn't going to be close talent-wise, okay? And maybe Michigan in some of those years would be close. And then there's other years during Michigan's runs where you're like, yep, this isn't even close.
Yeah,
so it's like 12 out of 12 times, no chance. And especially when you looked at how the Big Ten was split up, whoever won the other side, you're like, this is a wrap.
Mm-hmm.
So it was always like an interesting conversation of like, how many times do you feel like, and again, I'm biased thinking the SEC is the best conference for a really long time. This year, the depth, well, look at Muench.
No, it just is. Like, I don't know why do we have to,
why are we even doing
why
it?
do we have to defend that? Right. Like, I hate that people are like, oh, like we have to apologize for thinking the SEC is the best.
I hadn't said it this year.
Russillo, he's not the best. Russillo, he's not the best co-host in the business for nothing.
I love it.
That
look, I guess I haven't done anything in 2 months on it because I just got sick of doing it over and over again because I just never could understand it. It's like, so you're telling me that this conference that has like twice as many people that go to the next version of this sport as any other conference, but just isn't good, right? Okay, got it. Right. All right. Anyway, so Ohio State had this massive talent advantage. What's so funny in watching them week to week, guys, is like, you're like, oh, it's kind of a struggle. Oh, Judkins breaks one. Okay.
Yeah.
There's 7. It's Trevion. He breaks one. It's Jeremiah, who's insane. And Ibuka's unbelievable. Tate's really good. Dude, I even like that G. Scott kid who has like 7 catches, the tight end that's been around forever. I'm always like, how come he doesn't get a couple more balls? They've won games every week by just having 3 or 4 of these break because those dudes are so much better than everybody else. And you're right. Their best game was Oregon. So it's probably a little alarming at this point of the season when we talked about the Buckeyes the way that we did before the season started, but they're still going to be in the playoff. They're probably getting the rematch with Oregon, and they very well could win this whole thing. But I thought Day starting the post-gamer with, we can't run the football. I was like, here we go, because he's just telling us everything we can already see.
Yeah.
This is fun. We should do this every week.
Some weeks. Bowl week, I'm your guy. January.
So like 8 weeks from now. No, we are gonna do this every week with or without Tough Guy. and we look forward to it.
These Hornets games are gonna watch themselves, guys.
I may or may not be on Russillo's show on Monday. We'll find out. That's TBD now.
Uh-oh.
And Muench and I will be back. The McShay show every Tuesday, every Thursday, and starting tonight, every Saturday night. And we look forward to making this a live show coming up soon. So, Russillo, I appreciate your time, brother. All joking aside.
It was awesome to do this, not have to worry about anything. It was awesome to catch up with Michigan, man. I think it was like
right.
20
It's
years
been
ago.
a minute.
So thanks, man.
Thanks
so much for letting me do this. I appreciate it.
All right. We'll see you on the other side. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas, in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in DC. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit rg-help.com. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 1-800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York.